Thanks everybody for joining the OpenJ9 community call today. Please update the minutes with your name and affiliation so we know who's been joining the call. And if I look at our agenda, our first item is always the Ask the OpenJ9 community. So I don't see any external community members on the call today, but if there's any topics that might be of interest to the community that we could cover today, does anybody have anything they want to bring up or discuss? Okay. One of the discussions that came up last week was around JRE packages. And I know there's been discussions around non-compressed refs packages as well. Does anyone know if either of these discussions have been pushed with Adopt, or if there's issues open for them? Okay. All right, so I will take a to-do to make sure that we've opened the discussion with Adopt around building these extra packages. And particularly the JRE packages need to be an Adopt discussion. The non-compressed refs packages, we should start from OpenJ9 and then see if we can get them published through Adopt. All right. Is there anything else in the Ask the OpenJ9 community section that we want to bring up? All right. If we have more community members join later on, I think we'll circle back to this, but why don't we jump into our general business then? Irina, do you want to take us through the issue counts?
Yes, so I had some to do here to break down by JDK. I've done it up to a point, so the issues for the open, for the open issues, we have 256 open, slight raise from where we were in the previous weeks, and below is the breakdown per JDK, 22 in 11, and 8 in 10, 9 in 18 in 9, and 9 in 8. Test failures, very similar to last week's. I would say it's the same neighborhood. JEBs are exactly the same, and same with enhancements. Again, everything seems very close to where it used to be. I still have that to do to single out the PRs and the work in progress PRs as well. Any specific questions on this one?
No, it looks like we're managing to keep the numbers reasonable. So I'm not seeing terrible growth here that it would indicate a problem.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay.
All right. The next section then, if there's no other comments. The next section is discussing release mechanics. Given that the 0.8 release is complete, I'm not sure that we need this particular section right now. So unless there's any objections, I'm going to remove this section and we can handle release discussions around the next release the 0.9 release.
Yeah, that was the only comment that I was going to make, was that we should start putting together the 0.9 release plan at Eclipse so that we can get that. There's that review period that has to happen, and there's only twice a month or something that they actually meet to approve things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then just defining the content for it so that the community can actually review it. I think the last time we went through this, we spent a lot of time discussing it internally and then posted it to the Eclipse site as kind of a fait accompli. We should probably try to do that a little bit more openly this time around if we can.
Yeah, good point. Taking a note on that under the next release section. So, all right, since I've taken that note in the next release cycle, I'd like to jump back to talking about machines, and we'll discuss the next release more when we get down there, if that works for everybody. So we continue to have, project continues to be in need of new machines and more machines. I see Charlie's not on the call. I know his discussions with the University of New Brunswick are continuing, and I think they're at the point where they're starting to identify what hardware can be moved there. I don't have more details than that, though. Does anybody else on the call have more details? All right. I understand that Adopt has been looking at getting new Windows machines to enable more testing there. Does anybody who's been working with Adopt have more details on that?
We haven't got any new ones as yet, so that situation is still ongoing.
Do you know when the machines may become available?
Absolutely no idea. I think Arena was going to try and chase that up today at some point. But yeah, at the moment, no, we don't have an outlook on that.
Well, the last I heard from George was he was close to having a contact at Microsoft, and was going to share with us too to see if we could also pursue the same avenue. But I haven't heard anything since. It was about a week ago.
Yeah, same here.
Okay. All right. Other than that, I don't believe there's any other updates to machines for OpenJ9. End user experience then. Have we, I know I've tweeted this recently about the OpenJ9 community calls, and we've discussed running many tech talks here. I don't know that we've gotten anywhere further than early discussions. Does anybody have any status updates in this area?
I don't think anyone gave us any input on things that they'd like to see, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, maybe we should just bear down and start talking about them. The metronome one is actually kind of an interesting one, because I know Charlie says he's been seeing a lot of interest or getting a lot of interest in metronome from the conferences he's been at recently. So maybe just a short talk about the various command line options that you can enable in metronome and what they do would be an interesting one to start on. Or we could do the shared classes one as the other, I guess, sort of obvious high profile one.
I'm aware of someone who's writing an article on shared classes, so I think there may be some more interest coming there.
Yeah.
So maybe tackling the metronome one might be a good starting point.
Yeah. Another one I guess I could sign up for it is to just talk about some of the verbose JIT options or something like that, like some of the diagnostic options that we've got available to us that are pretty interesting, powerful, if you are interested in that kind of thing.
Yeah, Mark, am I hearing you volunteer to do this in the next?
Yes, I did.
Do you have a time frame you think you'd be able to?
I could try. I mean, it's just a short thing, right? So I could try writing a few slides. Let me think about schedule. I'm not sure I'm willing to do it for the coming week, but maybe 2 weeks from now, I would sign up for.
Okay.
Documented and proven. Yes. Okay. Better put it in my calendar.
All right. And I see that there was discussion around the Ansible pull request. Has that landed now? Or is there other reviews still ongoing?
I haven't checked it recently. That's my bad. I should have checked that one recently when I got back from my vacation. Well, let me just pull it up now.
It looks like it's still open, so...
yeah, I'm not surprised. I
just
remember asking, I hope I pressed post on it, asking Adam to give a final review on it, but maybe I didn't get that in.
Yeah, Adam marked it as okay. We're just waiting for somebody to run the build and confirm it still works. So.
Right, yeah, okay.
All right, so we're close on this. Hopefully we'll get that closed out.
I'll follow up on that one this afternoon.
All right, thanks, Mark. Yeah. So one of the things that's been discussed has been sort of been two items that have been discussed on the on issues, and that's WordPress versus something like Jekyll for hosting a blog for OpenJ9. Just trying to see if I can spell Jekyll. There we go. Is there anybody who has experience running blogs with either of these that has strong opinions on which would be a better fit for the community?
I don't know. I mean, doesn't our current website use Jekyll as its way of generating things? I guess my stupid little personal blog thing that I almost never post in is posted via Jekyll too, just using GitHub IO thing. It's relatively easy as long as you like Markdown.
Yeah. I will admit having no experience with either of them. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have any great experience with it. I mean, the Jekyll one works. It kind of depends, I guess, on how elaborate you want to get with it.
Okay.
For the record, I promised last week to work on the OpenJ9 a blog to talk about this call. So I did do that this week, but without a place to put it, and I haven't actually asked anybody to review it either. So I'll post it somewhere. Somebody can provide input if they want.
Okay.
I could do that via GitHub issue if we want, or a Google Doc and mail the link to some people. I don't know what the best way to do it. I don't have an objection to taking feedback from anyone on it. So I could just post it in an issue if that's appropriate. So we think.
I think pick whatever is going to work easiest for you to get the kind of review and feedback you want. And let us know how it worked.
Yeah. I don't know. Issue's not really perfect either. Ideally, it would be a pull request, but I guess I could do a pull request against my own blog repo and then send the link to people to go comment on it. Maybe that would be a way to do it. I'll think about that.
Google Docs in reviewing mode so that you can questions.
Yeah. Right. All right. I'll think about that.
I would like us to, unfortunately, Sue's not on the call, and she's one of the people who's been most involved in our website. I would like us to close out on getting a blog in the next little while. Getting a story is going to encourage people to put content up, or at least remove one of the obstacles in doing that.
Yeah, agreed.
I think let's give ourselves 2 weeks to sort this out.
Sounds reasonable.
All right. Is there any other discussion items? Sorry, I had mentioned there were 2 things we wanted to talk about. WordPress was one of them. The other is the Wiki. Do we want to create a GitHub Wiki on our project? James did some investigation of this, and it turns out it's quite easy to get your data back out of that. Basically acts as another Git repo you can just clone, and you get everything out as markdown. The only question there is permissions.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is who has the ability to modify that? Is this basically any committer, or is it, I assume it's committers that have access to change them?
I'm not sure. That's probably the one thing we have to sort out is who has access and how.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I'd kind of imagine that would be relatively static stuff that would go on the wiki, just because you don't have any kind of review. Like, the wiki doesn't provide much of a review process or revision history on it. I guess it does somewhat, but anyway, I mean, it has come up, but people have suggested before we had things like for example, documenting the process that we go through when we do a release, right? Having that kind of content there, other content about the about the project stuff, that kind of content, which doesn't change very frequently.
Yeah, it just becomes another source.
Yeah, I know, and I kind of feel like we have a bunch of places already. I don't know. I think if we have a very strong notion of what goes there and what doesn't go there, and like a sort of justifiable reason for why it's in the wiki as opposed to somewhere else, then maybe that works. I just don't like spreading out everything everywhere so much.
Agreed. All right, so I think before we can make a decision on a wiki, we need to run down access control and then talk about what kind of data would live there. So, all right, I will summarize that into the wiki issue, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Dan.
Is there anything else in the end user experience that we should be talking about today? All right, then moving on to the next release. I think we are calling that the 0.9 release, so I will update the agenda to refer to the 0.9 release. Are there particular issues in here that we want to be talking about? So I believe for time frame, we said we want quarterly releases to match OpenJDK, but given that we're slightly behind there, we're probably going to be targeting May for the next release.
Yeah, it sounds reasonable. We should, as I mentioned before, we should find out when the Eclipse reviews happen and try to get the release plan documentation filled out and ask people to review it in time to get, to get that nailed down reasonably early.
All right. I think we have a 0.8.1 release plan that we can.
Yeah, I think Peter went and changed it last week, maybe, while we were talking at the meeting last week.
Yeah, I think it's 0.9 now.
Okay.
Yeah, machines is going to be a big issue for the platforms that we were hoping to add. Yeah, I was just reading through the notes that are still there from earlier week's discussion of this topic.
Yeah, Windows being a big platform that we want to get supported, given the large user base there and the fact that I believe it's already working, makes getting those machines a higher priority. Did I hear earlier on the call, Irina, that you were working with, or going to be helping George with that, or following up with him?
So I did follow up with him. He said it's taking longer. It's still weeks away before we get the Windows machine. So I think we need to look into alternatives for that.
Okay, that's unfortunate. I know that OMR are using AppVeyor for their testing. But I think that's predicated on CMake.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
So maybe that's the approach we need to take, is to push the CMake work onto Windows, see if we can get that platform up and running first. Bit of a direction change for the people doing the CMake work, but hopefully shouldn't be too bad.
I assume they've been focusing on the Linux platforms previously. Yeah. Okay.
Does anyone have other ideas of where we could get Windows hardware, especially in the short term?
There may be some other options. Irina and I are going to look into it after the call. So I don't have any specifics to offer right now, but we'll see if there's some other options we can pursue.
All right. So the other thing I see here in red is the non-compressed refs builds. And I know we've had this request on Slack, and I believe we've had it requested through issues as well. One path forward there is just to create a second package. I believe, Mark, that you proposed that as a first, as a way to unlock things, to create a large heap.
Yeah. The huge heap build. I don't know what to call it. A fat build. No, not a good name. Yeah. very large heap.
I think that's probably the fastest path to get us unlocked on this. It does have consequences for our testing, but given we're not testing.
Yeah, I think that's the main challenge there, is getting all the duplicate builds and jobs and stuff done at OpenJ9, at Adopt, etc. But hopefully that's not much more than kind of duplicate and make a couple changes. As awful as that sounds.
Yeah. I think we should get them enabled in PR testing at OpenJ9, and then we can talk to Adopt about rolling it out there.
Yeah. Stuart, does that sound like something that would be just not really welcome at Adopt, or do you think?
I don't know. I would just chuck it in and see what happens.
There you go. All right. I like it. Let's do that.
Yeah, get the discussion going there and we'll find out. So yeah, I wouldn't want to kind of.
All right. If there's nothing else on that topic, then let's talk about advertising this call. So I've done a bit of a hit and miss job on tweeting about this prior to the call. I managed to do it this week, but missed previous weeks. So I can continue to do that. I'm not sure we're seeing any uptake from that, though. Does anyone have other ideas of where we want to start driving this, or other ways to continue to push this?
I don't know. I think we just keep going, and like we just keep having the meetings, and if nobody joins us, then nobody joins us. And we're still discussing useful things, I think, and documenting it and showing that we're having those discussions in the open. If somebody wants to join, then somebody will join. We can try and make it more interesting, but.
All right. Seems like a reasonable direction. Let's continue forward.
I don't know what else to do other than tie people down and make them dial their phones.
All right.
Don't put that in the
No, I'm not moving on that. This is recorded though, Mark, so.
Oh, there we go. All right. Well, fine. Yeah.
Is there any other action or any other business that people would like to bring up? All right, I'm hearing a lot of silence, so I guess then we'll call the call for today. Thanks everybody for joining, and we'll meet again next week.